Hey there, Photo Universe. Okay, so there's been a little bit of a change in thinking here in terms of the Fuji system, the X system. Really fascinating. So a couple of things have happened. Fuji has updated the X100, which was the camera that kicked it all off, and this is the X100S right here. And the X100 was one of those cameras where people just loved the form factor and the promise of it. It was the camera that they loved to hate because Fuji didn't quite. It's just like what the original when the XPro 1 came out. It was the camera. It wasn't ready for prime time, in my opinion, back then. Now, having said that, Fuji, unlike any other camera company that I've seen, talk about standing behind your products, has released firmware updates that pretty much have completely changed the X100 from when it first came out. They've really upgraded anything that they could possibly upgrade to make it better. They've done in firmware that they can, pushing the hardware as far as they can. And I even think that they're going to continue to do so. Now, there are other camera companies that kind of do that, but Fuji has really done it. I mean, to a point where the XPro 1 is not the same camera as when it first came out. Okay, so the X100, when it first came out, that has gotten better as well, but one of the major criticisms of the X100 and the XPro 1 is the autofocus. It's just really unreliable and slow. It works, but in comparison to other cameras, mirrorless cameras, DSLRs, the competition, okay? So with the X100S, there's a new X-Trans Sensor 2 that has phase detection pixels on the sensor. From what I understand, in other words, there's autofocus sensors built into the chip itself, which has drastically increased the speed of the autofocus. So we're at the point now where you don't really notice it. Like, it focuses most of the time quickly, and the camera's silent. So what has happened was that Fuji got the form factor right on that. That's the right size. That's the right configure. I mean, everything's wonderful. So people love this camera because of the configuration of it, but the quirkiness of it, the X100, and the autofocus performance, okay. And the XPro 1, same thing, all right? So right after the X100S was announced and came out, Fuji came out with the XE2, which takes interchangeable lenses. This is the 27 on here, the little pancake, which is not a bad performer. It is made in China. But not that there's anything wrong with that. It's just that if you're expecting a made in Japan lens like all the other ones, it's not. But it's sharp and it seems to work. So the XE2 takes the X-Trans 2 sensor and puts it in the XE1 body with the same upgrades. The autofocus is faster. It has the pixels for autofocus on the chip. And the viewfinder has been improved, the electronic viewfinder. So the XE2, also the big 2x3 screen on the back is beautiful over the XE1. Minor little niggle to Fuji on these things, like the Q button's down here, up here on the XE2. It's down in the lower right on the X100. I mean, pick a spot and leave it there. I prefer where it is on the X100S. Stop moving your buttons all around. Give you guys a little tip. So the XE2 does away with the hybrid viewfinder, the hybrid rangefinder viewfinder, and it just has the electronic viewfinder. So that's why I called this video the XPro 2. Because what Fuji has done here is, this is it, Fuji, you got it, okay? And other photographers have said that, and now that I've used this, you guys have got the non-interchangeable lens Leica replacement. This is it. This is the digital Leica. This is what we've been waiting for. This camera is phenomenal. This is the form factor, this is the rangefinder, and so much more. This is the promise of a digital rangefinder. With the EVF that you can switch back and forth, but with that beautiful optical viewfinder, the form factor, it's got that soul. When you shoot with a Leica M, there's this feeling, okay? You guys got that with this. The X100S is it, okay? The XE2 is really close. The form factor's good. The EVF is not as good as the optical viewfinder. And everybody's saying, okay, you can run an XPro 1. The XPro 1's a little bit bigger, isn't it? So that's where we're at. But the point is they've captured, with this, they've captured the soul of Leica. This is close. Okay, this is close. So I call this the XPro 2 review, even though the XPro 2 isn't even out yet. Okay, because I'm hoping that this is where Fuji goes. I'm predicting that if Fuji, they've been on a roll, they've been producing winners, and I'm predicting and I'm hoping that Fuji in the XPro 2 seizes the opportunity to take these two cameras and mash them together and come up with the XPro 2. Now you could say the XPro 1 is already that, but it's not. First of all, the XPro 1's a little bit bigger, and that little bit bigger makes a difference. It needs to be a little bit, it needs to be as small as you can make it, all right? So Fuji, when you're making the XPro 2, and I know it's probably already designed, smaller's better. Make it bigger only if you have to. All right, so the XPro 2, what do I expect in an XPro 2? I love the XE2, don't get me wrong. I mean, I can shoot with this all day long. Great camera. But once I've had that optical viewfinder in this, with this form factor, okay, see what I'm talking about? Now I'm going to stick with the XPro 2 for now until the I'm going to stick with the XE2 for now until the XPro 2 comes out, and we'll see what that looks like. But what am I looking for in an XPro 2? I'm thoroughly satisfied with this camera with a few minor changes maybe, but I don't know. This camera really seems to have it together, the X100S. This camera here, I really wish I had the optical viewfinder. So what am I looking for in an XPro 2? This is what I expect out of an XPro 2. I had to write this down. The XE2 X100S form factor for size. We want it small and solid. Weather sealing. And everybody's saying, you know, a lot of comments on the forums, what's the point of having a weather sealed camera if none of the lenses are weather sealed? Well, you got to start somewhere, right? Pentax has a bunch of non-weather sealed lenses. All we need is a weather sealed body and one weather sealed zoom, and that would solve a lot, give us a lot of options in terms of shooting in bad weather. So the lenses can come later, but let's do the body on the XPro 2. And then Fuji can work on the lenses. So definitely a weather seal. If it's a pro camera, it kind of needs to be weather sealed these days. All the competition cameras are, okay? The SD cards insert in the bottom, all right? If there's a way you can do it, Fuji, I expect the XE2, the XPro 2, insert them from the sides, make them separate from the batteries. Pros like to put tripod plates and things on the bottom, and I know you can, but seriously, if you can get the cards to insert on the side, that would be better. Another thing, so the X100S battery door opens like that, and it's a metal door and it's got a good catch on it. It's not bad, okay? That's okay. Not as good as Pentax with the twist and turn like the old Leicas have. Pentax's battery doors are the best in the business, other than Leica's, obviously, which they're a copy of. This door isn't so good on the XE2. I much prefer the one that flips up out of the way. It's hard to get the SD cards in and out of the XE2. I think I remember the XPro 1 was like that as well, where the door opened like that. And so the cards were, I don't know if the cards were hard to get out. They're kind of hard to get in and out of the XE2. The AF, as good as this, as good as the XE2 X100S, that'd be fine. Better if you can make it. I'm sure the algorithms are getting better all the time. But I'm sure the AF is going to be as good as the XE2 X100S. So on the XE2, this flash that pops up, that's really neat and it's kind of nice and it's, you know, more professional. I guess you can bounce it, whatever. But quite honestly, on the XPro 2, all we need is this little one here. Because if you're going to use it, it's going to be a quick and dirty thing. It doesn't need to be this big pop-up contraption. Just the little flash on the X100S is fine, because particularly for pros, and I'll tell you why. if I need a little, what I'm saying is on the XPro 1, I don't think it has a flash. It was a year and a half ago when I had one. So what I'm saying is a Pro is going to have an auxiliary flash unit. And we're going to get to that point in a second. But a Pro is, if I know I'm going to need flash, I'm going to, this ain't going to, if I'm going to need a flash, there ain't no difference between that and the little one on the front of the camera here. But what I'm saying is I'd rather have the little one on the front of the camera than no flash at all like on the XPro 1. And then I know I've got that for a real emergency situation or just when I want a little kiss of fill light. I can play games with that to good effect. It doesn't have to be as complicated as this. Okay, it's nice, but it doesn't have to be that complicated. Just throw a little one in the front. That's great because a Pro, particularly on a Pro camera, is going to know that if I'm going to need flash, I'm going to bring a big one. Okay, that gets me to my next point. Fuji, your pros, when you come out with this XPro 2, and if I think what it's going to be, pros are going to be flocking to this thing. It's already starting to happen, and I'm telling you, you guys are onto it. You guys are onto the rangefinder, digital Leica. You guys did it. The point that I'm making now is that pros are, but it's so much more than just a rangefinder. And pros are going to start wanting to use these for weddings and things like that. They already are. We need a Pro flash system. You guys need to step up. We need a 580 EX2 or 600 EX2 EX flash or SB900 level flash, and pull out all the stops. We'll pay $600-700 for that flash unit. All right, make it like a SB900. That'd be great. And then you also need the TTL cord, so you can get the flash off. A lot of pros are going to mount this to a strobo frame bracket, put the flash up top, and have the cord off-camera TTL. All right. I know right now, like Zach Arias, he's not doing that. He's using a non-dedicated flash, and I know why he's doing that. It's because Fuji doesn't have a flash that goes off-camera. I get that. But if they did, I'm sure he'd be using it, and I would too. So I'm expecting a Pro flash system with the Pro XPro 2 as well. I hope. These are all. I mean, these are wish lists. Here's a big thing. I'm not sure what the deal is with Fuji. The tripod socket needs to be centered with the lens. Now maybe because these cameras are so, I'd rather have a smaller camera and the tripod socket off center than have a bigger camera with the tripod socket centered on the lens. So it's just something I'd mention. If Fuji can get the tripod socket in the center, that'd be great, but I can see that their form factor there may not allow that to happen. It's just something that's a little odd with these cameras, but you can get accessory plates that move that, and so it's not that big a deal. Okay. And one last thing that I'd like to see on the XPro 2, the self-timer option should be in the drive. When you push the drive button and you get the drive menu, self-timer should be in there. Okay? It's what Pentax does. It's what I think Nikon and Canon do. It's just kind of, right now to get the self-timer you have to dive into the menus. That's kind of crazy. I know I can assign it to a function button, but really, it just make it an item in the drive menu when you push the drive button. That would be great. And like I said also, Fuji, figure out where you're putting your buttons. The drive buttons here, the AE buttons there, the drive buttons there, the top to bottom, bottom to top. Did that make that big a difference? You had to change it? Why'd you change it? It doesn't make any sense. Stop moving your buttons around. Every camera that comes out, you're moving your buttons around. The next XPro 2, figure it out. Make a decision and say, you know what? From here on out, all the XPro cameras are going to have the buttons in the same place. So, I can't, you guys might not be getting it, what I'm trying to say here. It's like the soul of the camera, shooting with that Leica. You know, I had the Lumix Gs, I've reviewed a few of those, the G3 I remember having. I have a G12 flying around here, a Canon somewhere. I don't even use it. It's just such a... So why don't I use the Canon G? Well, the menus are kind of weird. It's a point and shoot. The image quality when you look on the screen is great, but when you make a print, it kind of falls apart 11:14 for fine art. So okay, and so what's the point here? Why are these cameras so important? Well, first of all, form factor is brilliant. It is the digital Leica. It is the rangefinder that we've all been looking for. It's got the right amount of class and solidity, and the price is right. It's not, Leica has priced themselves out of the market. It's a doctor's camera. It's a dentist's camera. it's not a camera a photographer would even want to use because it's too damn expensive. I don't care how much money you got, $8,000 for a camera body is ridiculous. Maybe if you're the top 1%, that's fine. And I'm sure Leica's selling out to those people, and that's great. You know, it's a niche camera. It's not a, I couldn't get a Leica and sit here and go, oh, I'm so excited to use this. It's like, yeah, I'm putting it in a safe. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's too much money in one piece of equipment to go out there banging it around. Okay, so they're not really a camera company anymore. They're a jewelry company that makes jewelry that happens to take pictures. So that's enough bashing on Leica. I mean, do I like Leicas? I think they're great. If they were affordable and to the point where they were usable, it would be even better. But they're not, so move on. And so we moved on, and what do we got? We got these Fujis, which somebody's finally hit it out of the park. Somebody's finally done the right thing. But the key in all of this is it's image quality driven. So the form factor's right, the EVF is excellent, the optical, it's all great, it's all getting there. The XPro 2 probably is going to tie it all together and it's going to be the camera. We're close, right? I mean, these are good enough at this point that you want to use them. All right, these are at the point where, like XPro 1, I got that, I was like, nah, I'm not going to put up with all that nonsense. I want to take pictures. I don't want to screw around with the autofocus. All right, we're at the point where these are usable and you want to use them because they're cool. All right. But on top of all that, there's lots of cool cameras out there that are let down by interface because you need a manual to figure out what buttons to push, or they're let down by image quality. And these cameras, this is image quality driven. These cameras, I know that when I take a picture with these cameras, I'm going to get an image that's as good as or better than my Pentax K3, which was as good as or better than my Canon 5D Mark III, 5D Mark II. And that's it. So that's where I'm at with these things. That's what the deal is. Do they replace my K3s and my Pentax DSLR system? No, not at all. No, not at all. However, I will say for 80% of my shooting of what I do, these cameras are it. I want to shoot these cameras. Okay? This particularly X100S, this thing's awesome. One other thing, note to Fuji. So your aperture detents on your X100S are beautiful. That's a nice click. It's got the right amount of, all right? On your lenses with apertures, your interchangeable lenses for the XPro system, the apertures are really lightly damped. And I'd like to see a little bit more professional damping on those. I think maybe they're implementing that. I know that's one thing Fuji is doing. They're making their buttons, their knobs a little bit harder to turn, which is good. So, all right, there's some thoughts on the Fuji X system. And back to it, does it replace my Pentax system? No, not at all. PhotoCAD. The the 70-200 2.8 Tamron, that's just on a SLR. That you still can't touch that, right? With this, that's not what this is. You're not going to get that fast sports stuff or things like that. Can you do it? Yeah, probably. But can you? You know, that's the domain of the SLR. However, any place that you used to use a rangefinder, and for anything that you used to use a rangefinder and a lot of SLR stuff, these digital rangefinders work perfectly. And that's what's important. There's more overlap now. Back in the day, a rangefinder was a rangefinder, and SLR was the SLR. With the hybrid finder and with the EVF finder, the electronic viewfinder, we're still getting a through the lens image, which we never got with a rangefinder, which is brilliant. Particularly this hybrid finder gives you the rangefinder for quick, just all the benefits of shooting with a rangefinder, but it also gives you that excellent through the lens view, and you need to see exactly what's happening inside the lens, through the lens. And so that's why there's a lot more overlap now. That's why I say I can do 80% of what I want to do with these cameras and leave the 20% to the SLRs. So that's where we're at. That's Ed with Photo Universe, and that's a quick preview of the X system by Fuji, and really impressed. It's ready for prime time. Things to work on. It's not perfect, and I'm waiting for that XPro 2. I hope it comes out next month. There's rumors that it might not too, but the XPro 2 is going to be interesting. So that's it with Photo Universe. Have a good one, and have a wonderful new year. All right, talk to you later.